Steven Andrus here for the lines.com, playpicks.com, joined by the Lines golf writer John Hasselbauer. You can find me on Twitter at Steven Andrus1. You can find John at PGA Tout. It is US Open week, the third of four major championships on the golf calendar. And John, any good storylines going on in golf heading into this major? Any drama that we could talk about before we talk about the odds?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet in the golf world. I almost forgot there was a tournament this week because it's really been flying under the radar now. Yeah, I mean, golf has been really in the zeitgeist for the first time like this in a long time, and the conversation's like about everything but Tiger Woods for the first time with golf making waves. So it's an interesting time in the world of golf, and it's all converging very quickly all at once. With former PGA expats now coming into the US Open at a USGA governed US Open major championship, and who knows what the future holds for these LIV players. But my God, this weekend of golf between the first LIV tournament and Rory taking down a action-packed Justin Thomas final leaderboard at the Canadian Open, like you couldn't ask for a better script to tee up this US Open this year.
Yeah, my eyes are going to be glued to all the press conferences on the cable networks leading into this. But in this video, we are going to take our first look at the US Open odds. We are going to look at the field at a glance. We're going to look at the key stats that John has pinpointed for this tournament that he thinks will help us reveal the winner, or at least the contenders in this tournament. And lastly, he's going to tell us a little bit about the country club at Brookline, Mass. And for those of you that are new to the website, you can find John's preview every week on thelines.com. A little extra beefy this week with it being a major championship. I loved editing this piece. Such a great deep dive. You can find it right on the homepage. If you're watching this video closer to the start of round one on Thursday, you can always go to the menu under odds, and then under golf, you'll find John Hasselbauer and this week's preview for the US Open. So first look here at the favorites. The top five: Rory McIlroy off his Canadian Open win. Scotty Scheffler at 14-1, just a tick below that 12-1 for Rory. Justin Thomas at 14-1. Jon Rahm at 14-1. And then that's that solid top four tier. And after that, we're getting into the 20s here. Cam Smith, Xander Schauffele, 22-1. And etc. As always, you can find the full outright board and compare odds across sportsbooks at the very bottom of John's article. And this is such a great tool because in golf betting, there is competition for our dollars from across the legal sports books. So, let's just pick a random name here. Tyrrell Hatton. Say you're excited to bet Tyrrell Hatton. Well, we got a 60-1, a 51. Oh man, there's an 80-1 available on Mr. Hatton. So just emphasizing the importance of price shopping in the golf outright market when you're building your card of outright. So, John, let's circle back here towards the top of the article and let's talk about the course here at the Country Club at Brookline, Mass. I promise you I'm going to be watching the movie The Greatest Game Ever Played this week with the story of amateur Francis Ouimet beating the Brits in the 1913, I think it was, US Open at this same golf course, one of the greatest stories in golf history. Can't wait to see how that course plays now versus how it played more than 100 years ago. But tell us a little bit about this course. For starters, a course that is being played at a shorter yardage than what we're used to in US Opens.
Yeah, it's a very interesting juxtaposition too with the history at this course. And, as we talk about LIV and people kind of foregoing golf legacy and historical courses for cash grabs, it's a good reminder of how rich the history of this game is and how far we've come over time. And what makes golf so great is a course like this standing the test of time, coming back here a century later and not needing to lengthen this course to make it any more difficult. Gil Hans came in, same guy who did the renovation for Southern Hills, or the restoration, really. This is more of a renovation. He really didn't add length to this, which I love, that the course itself is more difficult on its own. That doesn't need to be lengthened to become more difficult. a lot of players in this field who have played it have quoted and said this, and maybe Shinnecock are the two hardest courses from a major championship standpoint that they've ever played. So scoring is going to be at a premium. It's going to be hard to find birdies on this course. There are a couple holes designed to be a bit of a breather. Number one is a breather. Ironically, you got to take advantage of the first hole. It's a pretty wide open, not the longest hole on the course. So you want to score on that one, and then you just hold on. Even the par fives are going to be difficult to score here. So you're definitely looking at a single digit winner. I'd be shocked if anybody gets to 10 under or longer this week. But yeah, like you said, it's shorter than what we're used to seeing at a US Open, especially after the last two with Torrey Pines and Winged Foot. Those were really just long for the sake of being long. Yeah. There wasn't much bite to those they grew out the rough, of course, and you needed to have good short game. It was treacherous around those greens too, but the design of that course is not really what made it difficult. And with the country club, it's all about the design. You've got undulations in the fairways. There's natural hazards. There's rock quarries everywhere. There's little, I think they call them like chocolate drops around the greens where you're just not going to have a flat stance. You're going to have to be super creative, playing around with different stances and stuff. So it's really like the antithesis of like TrackMan golf, which is sort of what this new modern game has become, where you just crank up your ball speed and hit off a mat and get your numbers. That is the opposite of what this is. You're not going to bomb and gouge this course. You are not going to get shots that you've felt accustomed to before, a lot of blind shots. So it's a true all-around test, and I really get excited about a course like this because if you're on your game, if your form is good, and if you don't really have any blemishes, approach off the tee or around the green, you can compete here, and that really hasn't been the case at U.S. Opens recently. You throw Pebble Beach aside in 2019, and it's really like it was a prerequisite to have distance. And here, if you're hitting a bunch of fairways, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what has me captivated the most about this particular U.S. Open is that, it's only by exact numbers 7,264 yards, and it was almost 7,700 a year ago. I know when I built my card for the U.S. Open a year ago, I was starting with bombers and pretty much dismissing everybody else. Like I needed somebody who was at least top 30 in this field in driving distance to even consider them because of what an advantage that put over them. So a guy like Colin Morikawa, I completely threw out. Even though he had won the PGA Championship, he would go on a month later to win the Open Championship, and he was dusting the field statistically going into that U.S. Open in strokes gained on approach. I didn't even consider him. Whereas a guy like that this week, I know we both have our eye on. We'll get to that in just a minute here. But the course itself, 4 par 3s, 2 par 5s. It is a par 70. You may hear some birds chirping in the background of my microphone here. Don't get used to that. We are not going to see a lot of birdies here, even though it's a shorter course. They have this place rolling so tough. And you mentioned the terrain, John, just to add a little bit more context to that. This course was built more than 100 years ago on top of very rocky land. They could not excavate. They could not do much considering how rocky it was. So they had to go around the rocks. They had to go over the rocks. A lot of blind shots here. I know everybody's excited to see the par 5. That's going to be a forced layup. And most guys are going to have to, I think the whole field's probably going to have to make it a 3-shot hole, and that third shot is blind. You cannot see the pin. So there's going to be a lot of really fun things about the topography of this course that you do not get to see on a weekly basis. And I think in my mind, that makes it more like the winner's going to be in that single digit under par range, maybe even closer to even par, and nowhere near that 13 under Gary Woodland score from 2019. This may be short like Pebble Beach, but I think you and I would both agree that this is a lot tougher than Pebble Beach can ever be made.
Yeah. And the rough plays a big factor in that too. I think the rough was not the rough's always going to be penal in the US Open. It's going to be a huge factor this week, and beyond the rough, like you said, there's just so much happening. It's so busy around these fairways.
And it's not just rough either, too, Don, right? Like it's not just rough because Winged Foot had rough and Bryson bomb and gouged at the 6 under. There's rough here, and we've already seen videos of players dropping a ball in and it disappears. But there's also fescue as you get wider from the rough, like link style European fescue that's going to be up to your knees.
Yep, there's fescue. There's also a hole on the back nine that has a super tight fairway that slopes into a water hazard. So you have to hit a super conservative shot off the tee there. And if you get aggressive at all, you're really bringing the water into play. You can't bombing gouge here. It's really bombing gouge proof. If you try to do that, you're going to have lies that are just obstructed, not flat. Like you could probably get away with it on like trampled rough at like a winged foot or something by the spectators, which is what Bryson kind of took advantage. That's not going to happen here. So you really do have to be good in total driving, because even the fairway finders, they're going to struggle with some long shots into these greens, and they're tiny greens. So you don't want to be hitting a ton of, 4 irons or woods into these greens. You won't hold them. So you really do need a combination of driving accuracy and driving distance, which that's nothing new at a US Open, but the premium on accuracy, I think, is definitely distinct here.
Yeah, let's just say the hat I chose for this video wasn't by accident. Could have shot 76. We're going to see some 77s and higher out there this week. I guarantee it. Hopefully Phil Mickelson, Moneybags Phil, shoots a 77 or higher. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, he won't catch 6 figures if he does that here either.
All right, so you mentioned total driving. You like, combining driving accuracy and driving distance. What other key stats are you considering, or have you already decided that you are going to include in your model this week?
Yeah, I think looking at difficult scoring conditions as a layer for just how do you play when it's not easy to make birdies, because a lot of these, like, birdies are better gained, opportunities gained, bogey avoidance. If you do that in normal conditions and you're playing like the Century Tournament of Champions, it's going to look like you're really good at scoring and you don't make bogeys. But I want to find the guys who aren't making bogeys on the true tests. So I have a layer of that in comp course history, where I'm looking at courses where the rough is super penal and you need good total driving. I think TPC Potomac is a really good reference point. That was when we were really harped on total driving before that tournament. You look at the leaderboard at the end of the day, it was Max Homa, Keegan Bradley, Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, 4 of the best total drivers, in the field that week. They might have even been the top 4. And those 4 guys really pop again this week. So I think there's a lot you can glean from that tournament not too long ago. I think the Memorial does a lot of the same things from a penal rough standpoint and total driving. So a couple really, and even this last event in Canada had a similar emphasis on total driving and avoiding that thick rough, and it's a factor for short game too. So you might get a nice tune up from these guys. Obviously, Rory's looking good coming off of this week. JT's looking good. So all those top guys who played last week got a good tune up at a decent test. Obviously, this next week at the US Open is going to be much more difficult. But in general, I just want to see a layer of how have you been doing in difficult conditions, particularly where there's thick penal rough.
So at the bottom of every one of your previews each week, you have kind of the field of guys that you're eyeing, some initial looks at who was top 10 in your model for that week, just to kind of give people an idea of the short list that you're looking at before you build your final card, which will be posted on thelines.com on Wednesday before the start of round 1 on Thursday. So before we wrap up here, John, give me a name or two that you've already bet for this US Open.
Yeah, the where I've started my card right now, and I have some room to go shorter than this with an extra add-on, but Colin Morikawa is the biggest name on my card right now. I got him at 33-1 on a juicy little promo boost on another book, but there's 28s out there as well, and as you said, encourage you to use that tool at the bottom of the article. And we've always seen this. Once it hits Monday, books get competitive. You see more offers. You see these lines move a ton. So I really try to be patient and not overexpose my card before we get into the actual week of the major, because we are starting to see a shift in the marketplace where there is this competition and the books are trying to get you the best number and get your money on their site. So definitely encourage you to shop around. But I've started with Colin Morikawa and a couple of guys I took a couple of weeks ago at longer numbers that I'm still feeling pretty good about. Cameron Young, I got at 66 to 1 a couple weeks ago. Feel great about that. I think he can tap into the same skill set that he used again at the Wells Fargo. And he looked great in his last PGA Championship, came a stroke away from at least getting in that playoff. So love the way his form is trending. I really like Keegan Bradley. I got a 150 to 1 on him, and I think he's still around 120, 130. Anything over 100 for the New England local guy. Great total driver of the ball. Seems to have found some life in the putter. If anybody asks me for a bet who doesn't bet golf that much, throw some, I think this is your phrase, throw some lunch money on Keegan Bradley, because you don't have to put that much in. And obviously he's struggled to win, but he's found himself in contention on a lot of these courses that reward good ball striking. So I like Keegan. And then obviously I'm with Mito again. It broke my heart at the PGA Championship, but you hope that he learned from it. He took some experience out of it. I got a 99 to 1, not quite 100, but I think there's some 50s now on him. You'll probably find some drift somewhere around there, but obviously the form is good, and he's trending once again. So that's where my card's at right now.
Mito Pereira still 65 to 1 for those interested. I think we saw 100 to 1 on Keegan Bradley. You and I both know we're going to have first round leader Keegan Bradley bets in this tournament. Let's be honest. I might even do like a top 5 type pays all ties on Keegan Bradley. Like, it's setting up so well for a Keegs good start and typical Keegs meltdown towards the end here. So, but I do want to emphasize the one point you made about Colin Morikawa, and you have a whole spotlight section on him in your article. So I would encourage everybody to go read that. But, and I have a follow-up question for you too after I make this point. I ran the numbers already to start this week and got my initial list, but then I filtered it for score relative to par as difficult, right? Because we're on a tough course here. There's no greater test than the US Open. So I want to know which guys are doing these stats on tough courses. And Morikawa catapulted up that list to number 2, just behind, I believe it was Jon Rahm. So at 28 to 1 for Morikawa on a shorter course, we don't have to worry about his driving distance here at the country club. Stands out to me as well. I got to bet him at 28 to 1. My question to you is, and we'll wrap up on this. When we filter it for courses that are tough, a lot of those courses Morikawa played when he was in much better form than he has been this year. He hasn't been in great form this year. So are you concerned about that? Or are we still trying to look at a wider angle lens view and understand that Morikawa has the ability to pop any given week?
Yeah, I think the results have not looked good for Morikawa. He hasn't had a top 20 in a while, and the last time he was really in contention was probably that Genesis, or I guess the Masters. He looked pretty solid. But I think the tee to green game has been solid. The ball striking especially has been solid, not really below his like overall averages. And every time he's played in a major, he has gained on driving distance, driving accuracy, and approach since his first start at Pebble Beach. That was the only time.
Look good at the Masters. We should note that too. Did look good at the Masters.
Yeah. So Colin's one of those guys who he just turns it on, and he knows how to peak when he gets to a major. And maybe he's just using some of these in between events as a tune up to work on some things. But he knows that his goal in his career, he's already won a couple of majors. That's really where his eyes are at, and he can get himself to peak at those times. And what jumped out to me is he's never been a good putter since his rookie season, but he's gained in 70% of his majors putting. So that's a stat that it's going to come down to that with Colin. And I think it's interesting that his driving distance is not as poor as you might think, because you look at him and you're like, super precise, accurate guy, not a big stature guy by any means, but he is an above average driving distance player. And we've seen him take advantage of drivable par 4s in all of these majors where he's gone on to find success. There is a drivable par 4 here too. So I like that omen for him. And he's a guy who I just expect to hit a high clip of fairways. And this is a design that's not really going to allow the Rory McIlroys and the Cameron Youngs of the world to bomb down the fairway. They might even have to hold back. There's not a lot of holes here where you can hit a 350-yard drive because the way that the course contours, it just won't let you do it. So I think his steady 300-yard drives in the fairway are really the formula that you need here. You don't need much more distance than that to do well at this course.
And people, to drive the point home on price shopping one more time, like, look at our price comparison tool. There is a book out there that has Will Zalatoris, who granted has performed well in majors, but has not won a tournament on the professional tour or a major on God's green earth. And he is available at one book at 22-1, and Colin Morikawa, two-time major champion with a ton more wins on top of that, at 27-1. So price shop, find the best price on these guys to do it. I'm with John. Colin Morikawa is the first name that is on my betting card this week for the US Open. We will share the rest of our card later this week. John in his article on Wednesday. I will be sharing it in the Lines Discord channel. You can find that at the top right corner of thelines.com. Just click on that Discord button next to the Twitter symbol, and you can join for free and join in on the amazing golf conversations that we have each and every week. So we'll leave it there for now. Plenty more coming this week on thelines.com. We will also have a free US Open contest this week. You can find that by going to play.thelines.com. That should be open by Wednesday. You can win some free money for it. So for John Hasselbauer, I'm Steven Andrus. Best of luck this week on the US Open. Enjoy all the golf. Enjoy all the drama.